Welcome to Flipping Tables, where we bring all of our religious thinking to Jesus, who flips the table for his upside-down kingdom. I'm Julie Sexton, and I'll be your host. Welcome to episode 25. In this episode, we're going to be in Mark chapter 7. For the first and likely only time in his earthly ministry, Jesus has ventured outside of Israel. This is big. I actually didn't even know this until I really started studying this, friends. Jesus has taken a trip to the city of Tyre in the region of Phoenicia, which we would know as modern-day Lebanon. And I've been asking myself, why did Jesus take a trip outside of Israel? And two things initially come to mind. His cousin, John the Baptist, had recently been beheaded by Herod, and a shift in Mark's gospel and the ministry of Jesus is on the horizon. Jesus went to Tyre on the down low. Perhaps he wants to take a minute to grieve and regroup. But a desperate woman, and not any woman, but a Gentile woman, heard that the Jewish healer was in her town, and she was a mama on a mission. Her little girl is possessed by a demon, and she's willing to do anything, including beg Jesus to heal her. This is a really moving encounter, and I'm honored to be joined by my co-host, Twyla Brown and Kimberly Daniels. We're just three Gentile women, fierce mama bears, all falling more in love with Jesus every single day. And we are so happy to have you join us at our table. Welcome, friends.
How are you?
I'm good. We missed you last week.
I know. I was going to say, it's good to be back.
I know.
Yeah.
It wasn't
I missed
the
you
same
guys.
without
it felt
you.
really weird, but yeah.
We don't like it when it's just two of us, or if I ever have to do it by myself, I'll probably have a good cry or something.
Yeah.
I need my people
sad.
with me. I need my people in the room. So thank you for being a part of the Flipping Tables podcast. So we're going to be talking about a mama bear today. And I thought maybe we should have some conversation about some of our mama bear stories. So which one of you has a story? I hope you both have a story.
I actually do.
You do have one?
Yeah.
Well, let's hear it.
So my first real mama bear encounter was, probably... What year is it even?
It's 2023. Does that help?
Probably 5 to 7 years ago. My bonus kid, Jalen, who I love, was in high school, and he had a girl I think that he liked. They liked each other, and I had taken him to buy like flowers for her before, and there was like this whole little thing, and then come to find out, she wanted him to kind of keep their relationship on the down low because he was not white.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And so when I found out that this little girl said, like, because I think they had kind of like secretly been boyfriend and girlfriend or whatever, when I found out that she couldn't go to prom with him because he was black, I about lost my mind, because I'm like, number one, the school district that you live in is a really diverse high school. Okay. And secondly, like, what year is it? Like, what planet are you living on?
Who are your parents?
Yeah, I really like wanted to go like find her parents and be like, what in the world is wrong with you? And like give them a big old piece of my mind. I didn't. But I just remember feeling so like angry on his behalf and protective, and, you know, didn't want him to be wounded. And so that was really my first mama bear moment. I mean, Finn would have been like a preschooler or something at that point, and there was no Theo yet. But like, that was the first time that I ever really felt that like instinctive protectiveness.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I would have been fired up about that. So, Kimberly, do you have a story?
I do. Well, when you said we're going to tell our mama bear stories, I was like, I only have one, and it's pretty epic. So I don't really like the phrase mama bear. I think it's overused. Like, everyone is a mama bear, and they're like over involved in their kids' lives, fighting their battles that they don't need to. Well, I literally almost fought a woman once.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, I wish I could have observed this.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm like getting hot just thinking about it.
You're turning a little pink.
I know. So my kids got off the bus I got them off the bus at the bus stop, and we were walking back to our house, and I saw that this car was parked in front of our house, and this woman was standing on my lawn. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I just didn't really assume anything. But when we got closer, I was like, hi. And she said, is that one Elliot? And I said,
that one?
Yeah. I was like, yeah. And she said, well, I just came over to tell you that on the bus, he threw my son's bookmark on the ground, and I came over here to tell you that he's not going to be doing that again. And so...
Did she say a bookmark?
Yeah.
Did she tell you what your kid's not going to be doing again?
Right.
I mean...
Well, I did not respond very well to this. So I look at my kids, and they're trembling. And Elliot's like, no, no, no. And she starts talking over him. Like, he was in third grade, because I talked to his teacher. I remember she was amazing about it later. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to take them inside and we'll talk about what happened, because he couldn't get a word out. She kept talking over him, and she was like not having it. She wanted him to apologize right there, when I was like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. This went on for like 5 minutes of her talking over him, Elliot trying to say something, and then she would be talking over him. And meanwhile, Luke is like about in tears. So I said, okay, I'm going to take them inside and we'll talk about this, and we can meet up later and talk about this. So I'm like, boys, go inside. So as we are walking to the front door, she, under her breath, called my kids a name. I would like to say that I let it roll off my back, but I didn't, because they heard it and they were terrified. Like, that was their safe place at our home. And she came and she terrified my kids. So I said, boys, get in the house right now. And I turned around and I said, what did you say? And I started marching towards her, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, my life is going to change from this moment on. Like, I'm going to make the news for one reason or another. And
She was table flipping mad.
Oh my goodness.
was.
I am dead.
So
I'm going to go find this woman.
I'm marching
today.
towards her car, and I look in her car and I see a bunch of kids, and I'm like, I can't do this. This isn't what they need to see from their mom, and it's not what they need to see from me. And so, and I would also like to say, like, I let it go at that point, but I didn't. I was hoping that she would throw the first punch, because I was ready to go down, you know? But I said, you need to get in your car and you need to drive away right now. And she wasn't going to. So I was like, I got on my phone and I was trembling. Like, I couldn't even dial. But I said, hey, Siri, call 911. And so she got in her car and she drove away. But
Did you kick her car?
I didn't. But I was like...
She bust out a tail light.
Like, I was like, honestly...
In my head, I literally see Kimberly, like, kicking her car.
Me too.
I mean, to this day, like,
I think Siri just interrupted.
Don't say that too loud, Kimberly. He will call 911.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
I mean, I would like to say that I handled it better, but I was hoping that she would throw the first punch, because I was ready to roll. And there's my mama bear story.
Did you at least leave her with, you're lucky your kids are in the car?
I think I said, shame on you. But
oh my gosh, I am infuriated now.
Oh, I know.
you're not going to come to my house. And let me just say that when we pieced together the story later, we found out that this kid had been taking Elliot's stuff out of his hands the whole bus ride, and Elliot kept asking him to stop, and he didn't. So Elliot took his bookmark and threw it down.
Good for Elliot.
And I was like, that is a natural consequence.
Yeah, good for Elliot.
You know,
wow.
Because he's not going to put up with that either.
Bully moms and racists.
Right.
We're not here for it.
All right, what you got, Julie?
Oh, man, I have so many. But first of all, I just want to say that I remember you telling me this story years ago, probably in Starbucks.
Yes,
And I am as dumbfounded today
like,
as I was then.
real life Did this really happen?
There are so many times in my life raising daughters. My kids are so much older than your kids. You have boys, but there have been so many times, and I mean, I don't have to think very far back because this actually happened last week. Last week, Paul and I were at home. We were on each end of the couch, and we both get a text. It was a group text from our daughters, and one of them sent a photo that I looked across the couch at Paul, and I said, "What is this?" Because the people that were in the photo were people that should not be together. And we knew just by looking at this photo that our daughter was hurting, that she was in pain. And I was livid, and Paul was livid. I mean, we were so upset and just trying to hold it together. And I was first of all just stunned that this was happening to her. And I know the people in the phone picture very well, and so one of them is in my contacts, and I actually pulled up the contact and was getting ready to text this individual some mama bear kind of, and I actually started typing it. I started typing what I wanted to say, and that little cursor just flashing on the screen, I just said, "Julie, you can't do that." It was just like the Holy Spirit restraining me. And I closed it, went away. And I will say that I didn't send the text, but I was still mad about it. And the next morning I got up and, I was doing my morning routine, and I just felt like I had to pray for them. And I had to pray blessings over them. I couldn't pray curses over them, or I couldn't pray, bad things over them. I had to pray because it was like I think that's why the scripture tells us to, not let things go on. And it was just like, I just had to let it go and just pray for them, because life is short, but eternity is long. And I know that they're on a bad path. And as much as they had hurt my kid in a temporary way, she's a 21-year-old girl, and she's going to be okay. And she's going to be okay not just now, but she's going to be okay, in eternity. And I don't have that same peace about the people that were hurting her. And so, I don't know. And I also saw this this video this week. It was really cute. It was a little family of ducks, and they were swimming, and they were on the edge of a waterfall. And the mama duck turns and very gracefully glides away, and all the little ducklings do except one. And that little duckling went over the waterfall. And I thought, oh my goodness. And then that mom turned around and she flew off down to get to the little duck. And I was like, well, how's she going to do it? And then one by one, every one of those little ducklings followed their mom over the waterfall. They all went over the waterfall. Isn't that incredible?
Did they live?
Yeah.
Yeah, they all lived. No, I would be telling this story.
How do you know they lived?
Because they were all swimming off.
Oh, okay.
They just all were going off together.
I would tell
I
the
need
story
proof of
either
life.
way.
You would tell the story. But it was such a picture of a mom taking care of her little duckling. And then this family, they're we're sticking together. Wow. Even if it means that we all have to go over the waterfall. I just feel like there's some deep lessons there for life, isn't there?
I don't know that my kids would go over the waterfall for each other, so.
Well, I know in a group text that all three of us, or the four of us, the three of us who were not directly wounded like she was, we were all in that moment, we would have gone over the waterfall.
Yeah.
So, should we talk about our lesson? Do you guys have anything else you want to talk about?
No, let's get into it.
Let's get into this lesson.
Yeah.
It's a good lesson. So we are going to be reading Mark 7, verses 24 through 30. And Twyla, you want to read?
Yes. Jesus left the place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered a house and did not want anyone to know it, yet he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an impure spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was a Greek born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter.
Okay, so I just had you read the first few verses. We'll save the rest of this for later. But so in the opening, I had already mentioned that John the Baptist had been recently put to death. And as we know, John was a forerunner to the Messiah, and he was sent to prepare the way for the Lord, and he has finished his mission. So John was family, and losing a family member is hard, especially one who had such a unique calling and purpose as John did. And so what John did directly impacted Jesus. And I think Jesus experienced some weighty grief over John's death. Don't you think that's fair to make an assumption like that?
Sure. Yeah.
And, you know, this wasn't just hard on Jesus. This was hard on his disciples because some of them had been John's disciples first. Probably Andrew and Philip and John had all been disciples of John the Baptist. And I think Jesus was just, guys, let's take a step back. His mission was attracting more opposition, and it was also attracting large crowds of people. He has fed the 5,000 at this point, and everyone who ate the fish and the loaves, they are ready to make him their king, even if they have to do it by force. They went to Tyre to catch their breath, to regroup and get ready for the next phase. So, again, we're not covering every story, but we are going to cover some of these in future episodes. But not only has Jesus fed the 5,000, but he has also walked on water. And Jesus has had more heated exchanges with the teachers of the law. He had recently had one with some of the leaders who had come to Galilee from Jerusalem, and this altercation started over hand washing, and it escalated to Jesus confronting them over how they had figured out ways to skirt around the law of Moses for their own traditions. So he's taking his disciples on a road trip to the land of the Gentiles. He's getting them ready for their future ministry. They're going to be carrying the gospel outside of Israel eventually. And just like the present opposition from the teachers of the law, eventually they will be carrying the gospel from Jerusalem to Judea to Samaria and to the ends of the earth. See how I snuck in Acts 1:8 in here? Great verse. But this is just a little preview. He is stretching them by making them really uncomfortable going places that they don't want to go, to be among people that they don't want to be around. And they're weighted down with some grief, like we've talked about. So in the verses that Twyla read, this woman, Mark tells us that she's a Greek, that she is a Syrian Phoenician, and Matthew actually calls her the Canaanite woman. So what we know for sure is she's not Jewish, but she's a Gentile, and we know that means she's an outsider. And she has heard about Jesus all the way up there north. She's heard what Jesus can do, and she's found out where he's staying because the fame of Jesus had already spread beyond Israel's borders, which makes me really excited.
When I read through this and realized that where this really was, I was like, man, that's crazy. There was no like internet or anything like that. And yet people in other places knew already of Jesus and his capabilities, his power. And so that was really like an aha for me.
Yeah. It was an aha for me too. And it was an aha just to even think about the fact that they left the borders of Israel. Because I just that's something I just read over and I just don't think about it. I think it's because now that we've traveled there and I look at maps a lot more when I'm reading the Bible to, know where things are.
Yeah.
And then we're like, wait a second, this is beyond the borders. This is big.
Yeah.
So again, friends, the Gentiles that's us, by the way, unless you're Jewish. They were aliens. They were strangers from the covenant promises. We were without Christ and without hope and without God. And this is how it was. But it was only part of the plan. And that's kind of what Jesus is doing here. He's starting to really amp up the next beyond him, what's going to come after him. But when God called Abraham, who was still Abram at the time, all the way back in Genesis 12, he made promises to Abram, promises to make Abram into a great nation, which we know is Israel. But the last phrase of Genesis 12:3 says, "And all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." And Jesus is the only way that this all happens. He is the way that all peoples on earth would be blessed. And so again, this little trip that Jesus took across the border was him preparing his disciples for what they were going to be doing outside of Israel, taking the gospel to the ends of the earth. And friends, we have to let this be a little reminder to us that we still have the gospel mandate to carry the gospel to the ends of the earth, the world. Wherever you're at listening to this, the gospel has come to you if you're a believer. And if it hasn't, if you're not a believer, the gospel is still coming to you because we're talking about it on this podcast every single week. And we want you to know Jesus. Because like I said in my little mama bear story, life is short, but eternity is long. So following Jesus means that we are willing to give up whatever he asks. And this might mean that you have to leave your homeland. It might mean that you just walk across the street. It might mean that you go to neighborhoods you feel a little uncomfortable with. You don't always have to leave the country. In verse 27, this is what Jesus means. So I'm going to pick up reading where Twyla, you read up to 26. In verse 27, "First, let the children eat all they want," he told her, "for it's not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." And what he means is, well, first of all, he is the bread of life. And Israel got the bread of life first, along with all his benefits. And Jews, they commonly called Gentiles dogs. They used a Greek word when they were referring to Gentiles as dogs. They used this Greek word that actually means a scavenger dog, kind of like a street dog. But when Jesus is talking to this lady, he uses a different Greek word when he's talking to her. And it's a word for dogs that means a household pet. That really softens it to me a lot. Thinking about a household pet rather than something that's wild and maybe ferocious that you would be scared of. You guys come to my house and Sir greets you very
aggressively
friendly.
Yeah, it's an aggressive friendliness. He's sleeping now, so that's nice.
Yes, we enjoy that. We enjoy that. Sir has, for those of you who don't know Sir, our listeners, he has an attachment to me that is unhealthy. He can't be in a different room from me. So anyway, we have to make a few little Sir jokes when we're talking about this lesson, but actually should stop saying his name right because he
keeps perking up a little bit.
Wait a second, is she talking about me? So Jews worship one God while Gentiles worshipped many gods. Jews were monotheistic and Gentiles were polytheistic. And this scavenger dog language that Jews use was pointing out that the Gentiles were unclean. They were, kind of like just chasing after all kinds of gods, and they, that was disgusting to the Jews. And when Jesus used the word first in verse 27, first implies that it's not going to be the final word. When he said, first, let the children eat all they want, he's like, first I'm going to take care of the Jews. I'm going to take care of Israel, because that's who this whole covenant and everything started with. But that's not going to be the final word. Just hang on. Because what Jesus is getting ready to do is he's getting ready to adopt a bunch of street dogs and turn them into some bougie household pets. Kind of like Sir. Mm-hmm. Because not only is Jesus the bread of life, he is the gate. And he's going to open the door wide. But not yet. This was just a preview. And a careful reading of the Old Testament, we see all kinds of previews of Gentiles being brought into the family of God. There were the Rahabs and the Ruths and all the Egyptians who chose to exit Egypt when the Israelites left Egypt. We talked about Ruth not too many episodes ago. She essentially was in a field picking up crumbs from a prominent Jewish man, and eventually would end up in the genealogy of Jesus. In verse 28, the woman counters with, Lord, even the dogs under the table, she's using the same word that Jesus used. She's using the household pet. Even the household pets under the table eat the children's crumbs. Yes, ma'am, they surely do. She's saying, Lord, your people have been dropping crumbs. And whether she knew it or not, it had been happening for centuries. And she's like, I am desperate. Please scrape some crumbs off the table. My daughter needs a miracle, and you're the only one who can provide one. And I love Mark, and I know that we have been going through a series of lessons on Mark, but I have to drop in what Matthew says, because in Matthew 15:22, in the same exchange, Matthew writes that the woman said, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. It's a lot more strong, but it's also more rich. She is calling him the Son of David. She's saying, Lord, you are the Messiah from the line of David, and I have heard that you were coming. And I know that you are him, and you're here. You have come outside of Israel, and you are here, and I want you to heal my daughter. She is suffering terribly. This woman had incredible faith. Jesus is moved by this conversation. And he actually really drew the conversation along like he does with people to bring out this beautiful faith filled confession. So when we go back to Mark, we find out in verse 29, then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. Jesus was impressed with her faith because she believed that Israel's salvation blessings were going to be shared with the Gentiles. And she was just there to get those crumbs. And when she goes home, she finds that her daughter is lying on the bed and the demon is gone. That's amazing. Mm-hmm. It's such a powerful story. I love her boldness to go to Jesus, and she was willing to beg.
And I love, this is one of those passages that's a little bit hard to digest sometimes if you're just reading and you don't really stop and dig. It is one of those stories that at first you're like, oh, this feels a little not so sure, Jesus. This feels a little...
Did you just call her a dog?
Right. So, really being able to break it down like this, for ourselves, but also for our listeners, I think will be so valuable. Because I know I've actually recently, the three of us know, I recently was trying to dig through this one and break it down a little bit with somebody that I was having dialogue with. So, I think this was a great explanation. So thank you for the work you put into this.
Good. I hope that it encourages others. And I think it should encourage us also to continue to be bold with our needs and the things that we, want Jesus to do for us. Even if he doesn't do them, we should be bold enough to go to him and ask.
Yeah. Well, ladies, let's wrap up with our bright spots. What do y'all have for me?
How many baptisms were there on Sunday?
5.
Those were my 5 bright spots. That and you being on stage talking about, you hosted, but your few minutes that you talked about communion was great. And I just love hearing you every time you're up there. So that was my bright spot. And I was like a sobbing mess during all the baptisms.
Oh my gosh.
They were so emotional.
It was so good. I mean, what a morning to be a part of the service. That was amazing. Well, my bright spot was the whole reason I wasn't with you all last week. My niece, Malia, who just turned 14. I've talked about her before. She was recently baptized, and every summer she comes and she stays with me for a week, and I get that one-on-one girl time. And she's so sweet and so special to me. And so I was thankful to have that week with her. And thank you guys for giving me the night off so that I can hang out and do all the girly things. We did our little boutique, stroll and went to some different little shops and had, little treats together, and it was just really nice to spend time with her. So that is my bright spot.
That's wonderful. Sweet. That's really sweet. Okay, well, I'm going to do a Sunday school answer. My bright spot is Jesus. And I thought,
obviously,
that is so cheesy kind of, but I was just enjoying the Lord so much the other day. I was walking and I had done one of my pauses, and I had listened to a passage before that, and it was such a good, I just felt like I was connecting with him in this walk, and just that he's not far from me, that he's within me, and all that was just washing over me so fresh, like it does sometimes. And I just thought, Jesus, I think you're going to be my bright spot in the episode this week. And I hope that made him laugh.
Yeah.
But friends, we hope that Jesus is always your bright spot. And how amazing to spend time with family, but also to rejoice with other families, like Kimberly shared, these families that were having family members be baptized into Christ. And we're so thankful for those opportunities to celebrate with others close and far. And so we hope that these things have brightened up your day. And we hope that this lesson and conversation about this woman has encouraged you and will move you forward. We want you to keep following the table flipper and leave the table flipping to Jesus.